First things first, man. You're fucking with the worst. I'll be sticking pins in your head like a fucking nurse. Hey, what's up? First things first. That's what sobriety and recovery from addiction calls for. We're going to talk about it tonight. But first things first. My name's James. I'm a grateful recovering addict and alcoholic. I live stream every weeknight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. That's New York time. Feel free to join me any night that is a weeknight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for addiction recovery and everything in between. I've had a decent day today. How has your day been? First things first. Why? It's very simple, and then we're going to talk about it. Everything we put before our sobriety, we will lose. I will tell you during this live stream my experience with this phenomena, and I will ask you yours. Have you lost stuff that you put before your sobriety? This looks like this. Oh man, I quit drinking. Now I got to stay sober. But first, I got to get a job. And I want to get a house instead of an apartment. So I got to get that job, I got to get that money, and I got to get that house. And then I'll start going to AA meetings. But first, let me do a couple things. Well, this isn't the way it works. I had to prove myself this, of course, because that's what all our hard-headed asses do, is we don't take the suggestions of the people that came before us, but instead try our own way. And our own way, what we don't realize until we get beaten down to a bloody pulp, our own way is what got us here in the first place. The definition of insanity, trying the same thing and expecting different results. Over and over again, we try the same thing. With drinking, with using drugs, with trying to secure a career, a significant other. One of the things that we want that we think is so much more immediate, urgent than sobriety. A lot of the parts of sobriety and recovery in the program, AA is my chosen way, and a lot of the practices are seemingly irrelevant to our situation. Like, look, man, I dug myself into debt when I was drinking. I need to get a job first. I can't be spending all this time at AA. Like, look, man, I got kids. I can't go to rehab for 30 days. I can't go to detox for 7. I got to take care of my kids. This is our intuitive thoughts, and they make a lot of sense to us. But then again, so did drinking and using drugs. It isn't until we are beat up by our own ideas, the results of our own ideas, that we finally give way to ideas that are not our own. And some of them don't make sense. You go to an AA meeting and your sponsor says, I want you to volunteer to make coffee every night for the next month for this meeting, Mondays and Thursdays. And our brains, in early sobriety at least, before we fully understand, say things like, we'll say this exact thing if you're anything like me. What does that got to do? Well, that wasn't one for me. Going to AA meetings in general was one for me. What up, Chore Bunny? It's good to see you. I would say things like, I can't be spending all this time at AA meetings. I got to get my life back. I finally quit drinking. Now I got to get a job. I got to get out of debt. I'm going to jump straight to steps 7 and 8 because I got to make amends. But my sponsor would say, slow your roll. What's up with step 1? I'm powerless over alcohol. My life has become unmanageable. That was done for me. I knew that. That's why I stopped drinking. Number 2, came to believe in a power greater than myself that could restore me to sanity. And he said, your sponsor will say things like, are you really coming to believe in a power greater than yourself if you're not taking the suggestions of people that come before you? Are you still believing in yourself if you're making your own decisions? And hopefully this clicks for you a lot sooner than it clicked for me. What up, Marvin? Magi Davis. Do you guys have any experience with forgetting about your recovery and sobriety after you haven't used or drank in a while and getting straight to life? Because I know I have. Kevin W.
I feel good.
Hell yeah. I know. Oh, man. Woo-wee. Kevin W. Thank you very much. That I haven't got a member in a week or two or 3 weeks. Thank you, Kevin W. You are member number 35, and that just makes my day for 2 reasons. The first is you are committing to a community. You're committing to a sober, you're doing something new. Maybe you do this all the time, but if you're anything like me, well, thank you. Thank you, Kevin. That truly means a lot to me. It really does. It really does. I will go into the things that come together, including finances, when you begin to do the right thing. I wish I knew that in the beginning. The leap of faith that I've taken sort of came. I do everything backwards. I'm Polish. It's said that we do everything backwards. So I took the spirituality step. I accepted that there is powers greater than myself, as a last resort, and I should have did it first. For all of you that are struggling out there with the spirituality part of recovery, trusting in God because you may not understand God. You may have your own bright ideas like I did about why God doesn't exist, and there is some decent arguments, but not when it comes to saving your own sanity and your own serenity and your own peace. So what finally saved me after a lifetime of being an agnostic in the rooms of AA, there is no religion. It's a God of your understanding. If you're agnostic, you can be. And I was, because I was essentially worshiping my own ideas. My ideas about why I shouldn't be handing my will in my life, and like, how can I used to just wish I believed. That's how stuck I was. That's how asleep I was. And if you ask this alcoholic, me, after finally having the all sought after spiritual awakening as a result of the 12 steps of AA, I would say, first things first, when you're recovering, hand your will, your great ideas, your opinions, your best arguments, hand them over and get rid of them. Our best ideas get us drunk. Acknowledgement of facts and the ideas of people that came before us keep you sober. And I can tell you this from experience. I've been in the rooms of recovery a long time, mostly AA, and I just kind of skirted around the God issue. Like a lot of us do, especially after our parents told us there was a Santa Claus and then ripped the carpet out from underneath of us. I have a partially serious theory about the revelation that there is no Santa Claus, basically ruining our faith mechanism until we were desperate enough to skimbly bims. You know what I'm skimbly bims? You know what I'm skimbly bims? Hey, Gail and Kevin W. Oh, thank you again. Let's play that again. For all of you who are wondering about
I feel good.
joining, it's as little as $3 a month to help me pay my internet and gas money to get to AA meetings. And just keep on being sober, James, because believe it or not, it gets difficult sometimes. I have my good days and I have my bad days. But as long as I put first things first, that means my recovery and trust in God and not myself. I wake up myself, and that's bad. It is me that was the problem of addiction. Alcohol is not the problem. Drugs are not the problem. They are perceived solutions to our problem, which is a combination of different things around the board, but mostly it's self-centeredness and self-will run riot. So I've said it before, it's not our fault. We didn't decide that we were going to try to run everything, and we didn't decide to only trust our own ideas. It's just kind of a natural thing that happens. The spiritual awakening and what people call being born again, I think it comes with the revelation that my own ideas are not the Alpha Omega. Yeah, there's one down at the bottom of the chat, breakfast for dinner. It's called a super chat, and you get another animation if you do one of those. Like here's one. There's a little money sign down at the bottom. Now I do have a Cash App, and I could give you that, but that just feels a little, I want you to have an animation. I want you to have a James Brown or Napoleon Dynamite. Heck yeah, I'm sober. God. First things first. This in sobriety means your sobriety comes first. How good do we feel when we practice self-care? How good do we feel when we realize that we can't do all these things that we want to do as an adult, being adulting? We can't get the house, and we can't even feed our dogs the good food until we concentrate on our mental health first. Mental health, sobriety, recovery, they're synonymous. Spiritual fitness is, I look good, I smell good. What's up with that? I'm trying to remember where that comes from. I look good, I smell good. Where does that come from? What movie does that come from? Hey everyone, come see how good I look. I'm feeling good today. I had a day full of wellness first. Oh, James Brown. Okay. Do you guys ever quote vines in your daily day-to-day? Okay. You guys know the vine I'm talking about? Okay. Okay. I watch a lot of vines. Unfortunately, I've seen most of them over and over again, but some of them get me every time. I feel good. I look good. I smell good. I feel good. I'm looking all right as well. What do you guys think about me getting this mole removed? I always look at it and I'm like, man, that looks like a pimple. You know what I mean? But first things first, I gotta get to, and before getting the mole removed, I gotta maintain a sustainable sobriety. Hey, what's up, Luke Wild? I am in my 8th month sober this time, although recovery has been a lifelong thing for me. I realized I was an alcoholic when I was 18. Not until I'm 43 now, and not until 43 did I have my spiritual awakening, which is the complete picture of sobriety. I've been dry from alcohol before and not called myself sober. I actually called myself soberdelic because I was smoking weed and doing mushrooms. But even before I was smoking weed and not going to meetings, I was just abstinent. I was practicing abstinence from alcohol. When you practice abstinence from alcohol, if you are an alcoholic suffering from the disease of alcoholism, when you get rid of the alcohol, you still got the ism. And it's not a wasm, it's an ism. You got to work on it, daily reprieve, and grow. The thing that happens after we stop drinking and using drugs too is we begin to mature again. Drinking and using for the addict means we drink and use at all of our feelings, the good, the bad, the ugly. We drink when we're happy, we drink when we're sad. When we're celebrating, we drink. When somebody dies, we drink. Therefore, we never get to feel any of the feelings, or at least fully, and we don't grow fully. We get mutated into this. You know what I'm saying. Ingrid, I've lost motivation lately. I don't like it. Yeah, that happens to me too. Dopamine fluctuations. When was your? How long has it been since? If you don't mind me asking, how long have you been clean and maybe sober, or maybe just abstinent? Because the chemical reaction for when we put down our drug of choice too, our body, there's something called PAWS, PAWS, post-acute withdrawal symptom or syndrome. Our body reacts physically and emotionally to the lack of drugs. For instance, cannabis, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, releases a lot of dopamine. So therefore, this is logically explainable to me. The reason potheads are deemed lazy is because they have their dopamine supply with their pot. So if you just smoke pot, you don't have to achieve things to get dopamine hits. You just smoke your pot. You don't even have to have sex. You don't have to go out and seek sexual companionship because you got your pot. All your dopamine, all your endorphins are delivered. But then when you take away the pot, the receptors are like, where's my dopamine? And dopamine is the motivational chemical. Somebody stop me if I'm incorrect, but I believe I'm on the right track. And all drugs release different natural feel-good chemicals. That's probably why they call it dope, because most of them deal with dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, Skimbley Bimberson. Kevin W., I guess that is what they mean by couch lock. Well, there's also the physical indica couch man. Indica is the physical relaxation cannabinoid, I guess. Couch man, indica. Hey, Tina Hinkle. How y'all doing? It's good to see you. And it's good to be seen. Thanks for coming to visit me on these days. But Luke Wild, here's something about recovery. So I was thinking about this yesterday. Alcoholism is said to be progressive. Every time you relapse, you pick up where you left off the last time, even if it's 8 years later. When you pick up, it was like you were drinking the entire time. It is progressive. You are that much worse. I've found this to be the same way with recovery. When you pick up recovery again, you pick up where you left off. It's progressive. Both of these, recovery and active addiction, progress with our personalities, with our emotional growth, with our growth. So the more we mature, the worse the disease gets. Because the disease is a disease of self. And it's a disease of the mind and of the spirit. So the more our spirit deteriorates when we're away from the spiritual solution of, say, Alcoholics Anonymous, the more our spiritual fitness deteriorates, the more vulnerable and susceptible we are to the power of our disease. The more we're practicing the spiritual solution, the less power our disease has over us. Excuse me for a minute. So, I say that, you ask me how long I've been sober. Well, holy moly macaroni.
Feel good.
Let's do it again. Ibola, what is, thank you.
I feel good.
Holy moly, it might be a full moon or something out there. You guys are joining up like the bing bong booms. Thank you, Ibolia Molnar. Thank you. First things first. Thank you. I put helping others first because that is an essential part of the principles of AA. It's the 12th principle, service. I follow the 12 principles of AA like a code now. And if you don't know what they are, it goes like this: honesty, hope, faith, courage, integrity, willingness, humility, brotherly love, discipline, perseverance, spirituality, and service. So once I started putting helping people first instead of trying to be a big fat YouTuber with big fat stacks of money, I left that behind. Live streams aren't necessarily that. YouTube algorithm doesn't want a whole bunch of live streams. And but you know who does want that? You guys, or those in need. I get text messages from you all day, every day, and I have been for 5 years. I try to answer them all. But my point is, you say it helps. So I said, you know what? And I've been up and down about the channel. It gets frustrating sometimes that the algorithm demands so much, but I stopped paying attention to the algorithm and started paying attention to alcoholics and addicts in need. You guys say it helps? That's what I'm here for. You know what started happening after that? Paid memberships. So I say that to say this. You put your sobriety and recovery first, and all of a sudden your bills start getting paid. When I first got sober, I was $30,000 in debt. Well, I'm so glad you say that, breakfast for dinner. I mean, I'm so glad. That makes my life right there. That makes my life that these do something for you. Because you know your boy likes to talk, and I got a lot to talk about. I try to share my experience. But my point is, when I first got sober the first dozen times, I'm like, I got to pay this debt. I ran up $30,000 worth of debt. skipping around Fort Lauderdale and who knows where through detoxes and rehabs and bars. So I got to pay this debt. The people, wiser people than I, would tell me, forget all that. Begin with your sobriety. First things first. Today I wasn't feeling so hot in the morning. Something was up. I woke up with my will running the show. This is where practice comes in, giving your will over to the care of God. Thank you, Tina. Well, I think about you guys too in the comments. And like I said, when you comment on these live streams, retroactively, say tomorrow somebody watches a live stream and comments, I'm there. And I think a lot, and I reread the comments. I'm getting pretty good at reading the comments live. But if I miss a bunch of comments because I'm off somewhere talking about me, or I get carried away, like one does. Sobriety doesn't instantly turn on a switch and you're this holy spiritual giant that does everything perfect. Practice. Progress, not perfection. But with God and with the program's principles, you realize that you're just human, and more than that, you have a disease. So you not only forgive those who have done you wrong, but you start to forgive yourself. Like me, I have ADHD. It's hard to concentrate if I'm not passionate. A lot of you will say, man, you're on point on these live streams. Sometimes you can see me skipping around and stuff, but that's because I'm passionate about this topic. It's my life now. But during the day, if I will realize a bunch of stuff I'm not doing. My walls, I got my plumbing, my plumbing worked on, and my walls, I don't even know how long ago. We could check the streams, but it was probably 3 years ago. The walls are still just the plaster. They haven't been painted yet because, you know what I mean? Tina Hinkle has obsessive compulsive disorder. I'm sorry to hear that. That's a rough one depending on the severity. Now, I'm no doctor and I'm no expert, and I'm definitely not a guru. But as of now, from my understanding so far in life, I personally believe we each have a twinge of ADHD. We each have a twinge of OCD. And I blame it on our environment. Commercials, social media, everyone's volleying for your attention. And this is just my opinion now. I could grow. I am growing. And my knowledge of these topics is expanding. So I may be wrong. But as of now, I believe OCD is a spectrum. Now, Tina, you may be diagnosed and have chronic OCD and have tics or, stuff you got to do over and over again. I know it manifests in different ways. But let's face it, the disease of addiction and alcoholism is a disease of obsession. We have a mental obsession about altering our minds. When we finally get that drug, there's a physical manifestation of an allergy known as the phenomenon of craving, where we can't get enough. I'm not an alcoholic because I drank too much. I'm an alcoholic because I could never drink enough. So that's the phenomenon of craving. That's the physical part. But the mental obsession is just that. It's an obsession. When in my drinking days, when I'm not sober, even when I'm not drinking, I'm not sober. I'm obsessing about when I'm going to get off work and drink. Or I will quit my job or get fired and just drink when I wake up. And if anybody doesn't understand the word progressive while describing the disease of alcoholism, I wasn't always drinking when I woke up. In fact, when I first started drinking, it was every weekend was the first alarm, was like, man, every weekend, starting with Friday, I drink. I'm probably an alcoholic. In my mid-20s, that turned into the weekdays and fired from jobs, and I would give up relationships. I would pick booze first. There's another good point. In our addiction, we put our drugs of choice first. Without knowing it, we said first things first. I gotta get drunk. Oh, word, there's a party? First things first, where's the booze? Oh, word, I'm waking up. First things first, where's my cigarette and my heroin? First things first. That is why in recovery, the solution has to come first. A lot of people say, James, didn't you trade one addiction, alcohol and benzos and all the drugs on earth? Didn't you just trade that for another addiction? Alcoholics Anonymous? I go every day now. It's my life. I live AA now like I used to live drugs and alcohol. Well, the answer to that is very simple. The definition of addiction is continuing obsessive compulsive behaviors regardless of negative consequences. Being active in Alcoholics Anonymous as a substitute for drinking is not an addiction because there aren't any negative consequences. There are only positive ones. So remember this when you find it tough to put your sobriety and recovery first. You don't want to go to a meeting. You don't want to practice the steps. You don't want to call another alcoholic. You don't want to do any of the suggestions of the program. Well, there's two ways you can go. You can be an addict, an active alcoholic, or an active addict, which is difficult. I don't think anyone will disagree with me there. It's difficult. The fun disappeared a long time ago. It's very hard. Some people say AA is hard. I would say if you're resisting it, it is very hard. If you accept it, it makes your life easy. But pick your hard. If you say sobriety and recovery is hard, well, so is active addiction. Pick your hard. Chore Bunny, you're building up and authentic. You're a good man. Also, ADHD is a result of stress, I believe, but that could be a whole live chat channel by itself. It could. ADHD is a brain disorder. It's a learning disorder. Let's look it up before I go on and say something that's incorrect. Breakfast for dinner, Gabor Mate's definition of addiction, right? Or maybe it's a universal definition. Just like everything, there's a couple definitions. The one I remember that I can relate to is when you continue your compulsive obsessive behavior of your drug of choice and ignore consequences that are building in severity. So it's continuing drinking or using regardless of negative consequences. By the time I was 25, I had already had two DUIs. My third one would have been a felony. That means prison. When I was 27, I wrapped my car around a tree, woke up from a coma 2.5 months later, and I was waiting for the cops to come get me, to charge me with a felony DUI because they tested the alcohol in my blood. And just like every other time, it was super duper duper high. Yeah, pick your hard. Addiction's hard, man. I mean, just tangible things like I gotta walk to the liquor store. I drank beer most of the time because if I drink beer and liquor at the same speedy rate, I'll be finished with 3 beers, before you've even taken the neck off of yours, or not you, but like a normie drinker. I used to put the beer in my shotgun seat and just crack it on the way home. But trudging home when you don't have a car through a blizzard at one point, carrying two cases of beer, Talk about a walk of shame. That shit's hard. Physically, emotionally. How long were you in a coma? Well, 2.5 months for sure, but I think it was more like 3 months. It was a medically induced coma because I had wrapped my Ford Explorer around a tree while drunk in 2007. And I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to talk again. I had a tracheotomy, lung surgery. Doctor told my dad my heart had stopped. I was legally dead twice on the operating table. So when I say jails, institutions, and death, I mean it. I've been up and down the East Coast in all kinds of county jails. I started in juvenile hall. And when I say addiction and alcoholism is a lifelong thing, I mean before I discovered alcohol, I had signs of alcoholism. Seeking dopamine and serotonin and endorphin release through things like vandalism, fighting, cursing, acting out. And they called it ADHD. Now, ADHD, attention deficit disorder, with or without hyperactivity, I believe is linked to addiction. A simple way to put it is you forget that sobriety has to take priority. A lot of people, and even me, I had trouble wrapping my mind around the first things first philosophy. Sobriety has to come first. And people will come in and they'll be like, I got kids and a wife. I can't go to rehab for 30 days. I got a job. The simple fact is, without sobriety, you will lose the job, lose your family, lose your life. Sobriety has to come first. As an alcoholic, as an addict, sobriety, recovery, staying clean has to come first. Staying clean is more than just abstinence. Our willpower can be powerful. I know from secondhand accounts that my willpower, it was annoyingly stubborn. So I could will my way to a lot of things, and I have. With a lot of effort, blood, sweat, and tears, but also willpower runs out, especially for us ADHDers. And it is suggested in the big book that no human power can take away our alcoholism. And that's when, I'm Polish, so I did the first thing last. Recently, 8 months ago, I discovered my spirituality. 2 of the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's 12 of them. 2 of them are, the third one's faith, and the 11th one is spirituality. I was pretty much practicing all the others except those because I thought I was smarter than everybody else that believes in God. I had my reasons until I had a spiritual awakening in the form of, what do I know? Who am I to say there is no God? And ever since that day, I would say, through the practice of a daily reprieve and putting my sobriety first, I now have a fitness of spirituality. It is fit. Like physical fitness is physical fitness from working out. From working out your spirituality, you gain spiritual fitness. It is said that there will come a time for the alcoholic when the only thing between them and another drink is God. So this illustrates how our willpower is, sure, powerful, but there will come a time where it's just not there. There will be no mental defense against the next drug or drink. I know this from experience and hearing people that came before me. When I connect the two, I know it now as a fact. my opinions would reject it and be like, well, I'm just going to stay strong. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to just do all the right things in life except for drinking. And that works it worked for me for 8 years. But I can tell you, I wasn't special, and neither are you. And I didn't know what this meant at first either. I thought we were all special and we're all unique, and which doesn't make sense in the first place. But yes, we're unique in certain character traits. Yes, our moms called us special, and maybe the PE teacher in our middle school called us special. But as an alcoholic, we cannot consider ourselves unique, uniquely ineligible for the program or the solution. This is called terminal uniqueness, and we all suffer from it. I would say things like, I am never going to believe in God. I'm sorry, I wish I did, but I just can't get around it. It was my own ideas I couldn't get around. When I figured out that my ideas, my opinions, my arguments are very trivial, they are the sum of my experience, my fears, my desires. They're the sum of my life up to this point. Our opinions against the idea of a higher power are just that. They're opinions, and they're trivial. What's up, Michael? What up, Shades? Kevin, if you'd like, I have over 100 videos, long form on this channel. One, you can look it up, Sober James Drunk Driving, Sober James Coma, Sober James Drunk Driving. Just look for the picture of my Explorer, my Ford Explorer, that looked like it ate a tree. I could tell you the story, but I spent over 60 hours making that video, and it explains the story. It's one of my favorite videos, actually, that I've done. Not a lot of people, call it hard to watch. And maybe it is, but that's the story of my coma. Crushed all my ribs, tracheotomy, collarbone, scapula, whatever your shoulder blade is called, all gone. Had to learn how to walk again. I wrote down on a piece of paper, because I had a tracheotomy tube in my throat. This is healed up now, of course, and it was, shortly after the accident. But I couldn't talk. I didn't know this, but for your vocal cords to work, air has to pass through them or whatever. Well, you can't talk when you have a tracheotomy because it doesn't, the air doesn't go the right way or whatever. That's why you see people plugging their trach up to talk. Well, I wrote down on a piece of paper, and I could barely write, by the way. That's what a 2.5 month medically induced coma would do to you. I was 70 pounds lighter. There's a picture on there of me. I look like a skeleton on those videos. But I wrote down, "Doctor, will I ever talk again?" And you know how your boy likes to talk. And the doctor looked at me and he's like, "I can't tell you that right now." So that was difficult. Very difficult. And it was more difficult for my family and friends that sat around for 2 months watching me unconscious and blow up like the Michelin Man because I was retaining water and lung surgery and all kinds of just nightmarish things that were going on. It was harder for them. And I just woke up. But I had to realize that they had to go through those 2.5 months conscious of me on death's, platter. And even my more religious family told me then that God is looking out for you. and I still didn't believe. And it's not one God that everyone has to believe in. What does the trick for spirituality in recovery is a power higher than yourself means this to me. My own ideas, my own opinions, my own arguments, my best objections to things, I've now realized that they are trivial. They kept me in a state of will, my own will. Addiction and alcoholism has been called self-will run riot. You are your highest power. Your ideas, your opinions are your highest power. Nothing makes it past them. And they eventually take us back to the liquor store or the dope man's house. Once I realized that my life was unmanageable because of my silly, I see them now, trivial ideas and opinions that I held to the highest power. I didn't know I was doing it, but now I realize that if I thought something, it means I had confidence, I had faith that that was it, that was right. And we all do this. And that will kill us. Willpower, I've been told I have an extremely solid willpower. Well, no longer. I have dissolved it. I've given it over. Step 3, hand your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand it. Him is what it says. My understanding of God isn't a him or a her. It's incomprehensible. It's something that I turn my will over that's incomprehensible. It's a leap of faith. I was desperate enough 8 months ago to make a leap of faith and say, you know what? I'm done thinking. I'm done trying to figure it out. I'm done trying to direct this play of life. And you know what that does? Well, for me, it gave me the ability to come off of an antidepressant that I've been on since that accident in 2007. So damn near 20 years I've been on antidepressants, and I came off. When I discovered that I'm not in charge, my best ideas is not going to get me sober, let alone make my life manageable. Sure, they play a part. But now, with AA's direction, they suggested ask for God's will and the willingness and power to carry it out. So anything that I want, if it's not in line with God's will, aka we all know right from wrong, we've always heard that. Humans know right from wrong instinctively. God's will is right. Our will is usually wrong. So we ask, we pray, we meditate for God's will in our direction. This is called G-O-D, good orderly direction, God. So if I say, God, take me out of myself and let me do thy will be done, not my will be done. If I really, really want something, I run it by God. Is it in God's will? When I really, really hate something that's going on, you know what is better than any antidepressant or alcohol or drug? Saying the words, God's will be done. If I really hate that I'm not able to feed my dogs the good food right now, and they look at, well, one of them looks at me whenever I feed them that shitty dry stuff, looks at me like, I really have to eat this every day. I can't afford the good stuff right now, so I do what I can with treats and supplement like boiled eggs and stuff. But instead of just beating myself up over it and saying, I want this now, my will be done, I say God's will be done. It's in God's will, aka reality, that my dogs are right now have to eat, and it's probably not even that bad. My will says it's bad. What do I know? One of the greatest things about realizing I don't know shit is that when I'm beating myself up or feeling guilty or I don't like something, what do I know? Do I even know enough to make an opinion and deem that bad? Bad and good, these are human constructs. Tidal wave takes out 5,000 people off the coast of wherever. Oh, that's bad. No, it's reality. God's will be done. I'm no longer worried about it. Oh, a tidal wave might hit here. I could live in fear, or I could just end that with God's will be done. My dog got bit by a copperhead on July 3rd. We ended up in the hospital till July 4th. Thank God, number one, that I was sober enough to handle it properly. Copperheads are common. They'll probably run into one again. Oh no, I'm worried. I'm going to spend every day of my life worried and fearful. No. God's will be done. We'll handle reality when it hits. There's a recurring, you're talking to an agnostic or a former agnostic all my life. And I had my theories about why the Bible's messed up and how mankind is probably, this, that, or the other thing. Here's a contradiction. Here's another one. Well, guess what? With an open mind and honesty and humility, I discovered recently that one of the most, if not the most repeated phrase of the Bible, 365 times it said, "Do not be afraid." Do you know the strength that comes from that? From a book I've thought I've outsmarted my entire life with my puny, trivial, menial, objective little opinions. I think I solved the Bible? No. God's will be done. Yeah, exactly right. Breakfast for dinner, I treat them better. God's will be done. I can treat my dogs well. That's all I can do. I can treat that Rottweiler well if I get the chance, but I'm not going to go kicking down people's doors, acting like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I watch too many movies. God's will be done. Not James's will that's like super Hollywood affected. You know what I mean? God, that'll get me into jail. James's will get me to jail. God's will be done. You know what I mean? I have dogs that I treat as best I can. And whoever I can talk to about their dogs, I try to talk to with love and compassion and tolerance. But that's all I can do. I could dedicate my life to saving animals and all that. But I dedicated my life to working with addicts and alcoholics instead. God's will be done. God's will be done. I'm an alcoholic. This sucks. Alcoholism sucks. Why can everybody else drink, but I can't? I'm sick of not drinking. I'm going to take my will back and I'm going to drink because I think I'm entitled to it, and I'm going to do it anyway. God's will be done. If I wasn't an alcoholic, I wouldn't have had a spiritual awakening, and I wouldn't be talking to you right now. One of you out there might just need this stream. One of you out there might... Every moment you spend in recovery, this is one of them, adds to your recovery, if not completes it. Don't stop recovering until it is complete. It's never done. There is no cure for addiction or alcoholism, but there is a daily treatment. And it happened for me. The completion of my recovery program happened for me when I realized my ideas ain't shit. Even if I'm the smartest person in the world, the amount of stuff that I don't know far outweighs the amount of stuff I do know. So who am I to say there is no God? And these people are getting sober so I listened. And I've been listening to everybody now. The power lies outside of my head. There's a limit to what I can do with my brain power and my willpower. Sure, it can be impressive sometimes. Other times it can be confusing on how disabled it seems with ADHD and alcoholism and selfishness. But God's will be done. That's how I was made. These days my ADHD doesn't piss me off as much, and it can be frustrating when you are walking around with 4 or 5 things in your hand because you have started 4 or 5 tasks but moved on to the next, so you're now carrying 4 or 5 things from those tasks. You can get pretty frustrated. But God's will be done. And I just kind of laugh and like, it's who I am. Do the best I can. First things first, recovery. I may think to myself that sobriety and recovery, working the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, has nothing to do with ADHD, and it's not going to help me with that. It's really debilitating, depending on the spectrum of where you are in ADHD or autism or OCD. But it seems sometimes like it's never ending and it's just getting worse, and you feel disabled. Well, I wouldn't have guessed it, but doing sobriety first things first, practicing the principles in all my affairs, helping others, making meetings twice a day sometimes. Today was 2 meetings. First things first. How am I going to get my paycheck driving to a meeting? Well, out of nowhere, I got a job. I work Saturdays and Sundays now. That's why I'm only streaming on weekdays. And through the program of AA that's taught me that serving others will bring you freedom from the bondage of self, which is essentially addiction. I've decided to get a peer support specialist certification, which is happening in September, and by October, November, I'll be a certified peer support specialist in the field of addiction and recovery, and I can go to work. So how is AA gonna pay my bills? I didn't know. The reason we don't know is because these are powers greater than ourselves. We can't comprehend them. It's a leap of faith. You don't know that it's a power greater than yourself until you start seeing the promises come true. You start reaping the rewards. It is a power far greater than myself. I practice practicing the principles better and better in my day, because the leap of faith has returned to me. That it has become belief. The leap of faith has become a belief. So whereas it was a leap of faith, all right, I'm going to let go of my will. I'm going to put my faith in the program of AA and a God that I don't know what it is and I barely even believe in. I'm going to make this leap of faith, and I'm going to hand all my shit over and just let go of control. That's a leap of faith. 7-8 months later, it is growing as a solid belief because of the results, because of the fruition of just payments in one way or another. They might not come as soon as I want them to. That's my will. God's will, aka reality, aka just do the next right thing, and the next right thing will happen. It might not happen the next day like we want it to. It might not happen in 5 minutes like we want the microwave to deliver our dinner. But it does happen one way or another. Sometimes it's in ways that you couldn't even imagine. So I'm going to be a peer support specialist working with addicts and getting paid. All because I'm doing the next right thing that has nothing seemingly to do with it. Well, people wiser than myself have come before me, and they told me what to do, and I took the leap of faith and did it. Put sobriety first things first, and it worked. Breakfast for dinner. I'm sorry, I'm blabbering on and on. Let's see here. I'm going to read your comments. How soon did you start drinking after the coma? Richard Bachman asks. Believe it or not, before I could walk. I was on a cane walking through the rain to a place called Bangkok Bistro to get to drink. And with my cane, I had ended up pissing myself because when you're in a coma, you have a catheter, and when you get out of a coma, you don't really have that much control. So I went to get a drink, aka not doing the right thing, and I ended up pissing myself at the bar. I don't know what I was doing there. It's the insanity. So after the coma, it was as soon as I could walk. None of my friends or family would drink with me, so I went to the bar alone. Shades of Clarity's latest video was about his return to AA. He picked up his white chip, took the cotton out of his ears and put it in his mouth and listened in a different way. Paid way more attention. In my experience, recovery is as progressive as addiction. If you put recovery down and drink for a while, hopefully you don't die. When you come back to recovery, you will have what you left with. And that's not an excuse to go back out. It's just relapse does happen, and it can be, if you learn from it, a part of recovery. God willing, you're a one white chipper and have a spiritual awakening your first time in the rooms. But that doesn't always happen. It didn't happen with me. But Shades, good for you. You're now learning to listen, something you probably started to learn your last bout in AA, but didn't quite get there. That's what I'm saying. Fake it till you make it. Keep coming back until the miracle happens. I am living proof of that philosophy. I have ADHD. I'm Polish. I joke around, but it takes me a while for a lot of things. Spirituality was one of those things. It turned out to be the final piece, the key to my foundation of recovery. Faith and spirituality are two of the principles. The rest of the principles I had been practicing in one way or another. When faith and spirituality hit, my puzzle was now complete. You know what I'm saying? Now I begin to frame it, and I move on to my next puzzle of recovery and put that one together. You know what I mean? So good for you going back to AA, picking up a chip. It's humbling. Sometimes we need to be humbled and humiliated. You're going to be humble one way or another if you're an alcoholic. Alcohol will either humiliate you, or you can choose humility, but it's a practice. With our sickness, it's a practice. Sometimes it takes a minute. Sometimes it doesn't. But one way or another, you're going to be humbled, humiliated, or just humble. And that's a principle of Alcoholics Anonymous 2 that I practice. Humility. A lot of people are afraid of it. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. Humility is thinking of yourself less. Humility is you can't do anything right. Humility isn't I can't do anything right. Humility is I do some things well. Thank you for the compliment. But here's where I struggle and I need help. Humility is my ideas about God and sobriety are not, they're trivial. They're limited. They're next to nothing. First of all, if I'm still drunk, if I'm not sober yet, my ideas are obviously not working. That's humility. And it's turned out to be one of the greatest gifts of recovery. Humility is a superpower. People hear you when you speak. People ask you to speak. You can help people because they sense your humility. They don't sense you're trying to sell them something. They don't sense you're trying to impose your ways on them because you think you're the shit. With humility, you can help another alcoholic. Breakfast for dinner, you treat them better than your neighbor's Rottweiler, you're damn straight about that. Super sad about ending a relationship breakfast. Gonna use that God's will be done. God's will be done. And we forget. So just keep on saying it. God's will be done. You know what I mean? And you'd be surprised. Someone spoke in a meeting this just an hour or two ago. My home group. She said she didn't get a job in recovery. She didn't get this job she wanted. We want things. We want them. We think we want them. We do everything we can to get them. When we don't get them, we get upset, like this relationship. Well, as it turns out, 2 months later, she got a much better job. Her sponsor told her God's will be done. Don't worry about it. Everything works out. Her faith wasn't even necessarily there, but she didn't drink over it. 2 months later, she got a better job. She loves it. She's starting in a couple weeks. So, and I can tell you from experience over breakups that I thought that was the woman. That was the one, and I'm talking heart-wrenching pain over a breakup. I thought that was it. What am I going to do now? That was my life. Well, it wasn't. Either another one came along, or now I'm single and I'm in my best I've ever been. People, somebody asked me tonight, do you have a girlfriend? I say God's will be done. I'm leaving it up to God. And I'm not saying I'm leaving it up to some bearded guy with sandals in the sky and I'll see him when I get to heaven. I'm saying the God of my understanding, which is basically just not me. I'm leaving it up to God, aka it's not up to me. Every time I've tried to will myself a girlfriend, every time I've tried to decide and pick a girlfriend and kick mad game and get that everything going right and just be, didn't work out. My will is limited. And trust me, I can be pretty good. I can get what I want, but I don't know what I want necessarily. I never knew I wanted this spirituality. I used to say things like, show me a completely altruistic, aka selfless person, and I'll show you a dead guy. Because my bright arguments and my self-proclaimed genius ideas thought that a completely selfless being would be dead. They'd give their food away, they'd give their shelter away, and blah, 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 blah. Well, I didn't know shit. Acting for others is one of the greatest parts of recovery that I can practice. I try to do it as often as I can. What can I do for somebody else that has nothing to do with me today? Because I'm sick of being in my head. I'm sick of worrying about me. I'm sick of it. What can I do for somebody else? It's a gift. Kevin says, I was raised in a religious cult. I went agnostic for a while trying to come up with a different version of God or higher power than was drummed into me as a kid. Yeah, like I said, I think, I'm a recovering Catholic. You know what I mean? A lot of people's problems with spirituality and the program of AA, they came from a childhood of being Catholic. In my opinion, our spirituality, our faith was destroyed when we found out Santa Claus wasn't real. God's will be done. How am I going to handle it from this moment? And in this moment, how am I going to handle it? It's already done. For me, I was asked 3 questions, Kevin, 8 months ago by my now sponsor, who was an atheist 15 years ago. He said, do you believe you're God? And I said, no. And he said, well, stop acting like you are and following all your own ideas. He said, have you ever prayed for the willingness to believe in a God of your understanding? And I said, no. And he said, are you willing to do that? And I said, yes. And I did. And then he asked me what my vision of God is. And I explained it as something I can't comprehend, something I can't even put into words. And he said, all right, well, practice putting your faith in that and not faith in your own ideas. And we just did step 3. Let's move on to step 4. So my point in saying that is, if you haven't heard the right words yet, sometimes it just takes the right words for each of our unique personalities to comprehend. But when I realized I just took the faith from my own ideas, which had been messing my life up for 40 years, and just now I put it in what I call God's will, which is another word for reality. I accept reality. I accept God's will. I trust that everything's going to be all right, whether I get in there and fiddle with it or not. Because everything I've fiddled with has turned to jails, institutions, and death. So the proof and the evidence is there. I'm done fiddling. My ideas, no matter how great I think they are, because we can convince ourselves that our ideas are the best. No matter what, I say God's will be done. If I don't know what God's trying to say, I go ask my sponsor. Should I do this? Should I move this person into my house? Should I do this? Should I do that? He will ask me, what do I think? And he will maybe say, I don't think it's the right time, but that's just me. What do you think? And that's where meditation and practice comes in, because the answer will come, but it's got to be an honest answer. Another principle. It's got to be honest. You can't say, yeah, I think this, Venezuelan bikini model is good for my sobriety. You can't lie to yourself. You got to be honest. It's not the right time right now, James. It's God's will. You just want that Venezuelan bikini model. That's your will. And it's going to blow up because it always has before. Try something different to get different results. Keep doing what you're doing if you want the same results. So I stopped. God's will be done. See you, breakfast. Good talking to you. Kevin, agnostic ideas and all that. I know there's a lot that makes sense about invisible being. What is that going to do? Who's there? Who am I praying to? Blah, blah, blah. The leap of faith is you begin to practice them anyway. Even though your best ideas are saying, this is silly. If your sponsor says, or if AA, or if people that have come before you that are now sober, happy, joyous, and free say, get on your knees and pray, you get on your knees and pray. Even if you say, this is stupid, this is silly, what is this going to do? You do it anyway, because what you've been doing hasn't worked. So that's a leap of faith. A leap of faith turns into belief when you start seeing mysterious and spiritual things happen in your life that are just awesome. And you start making connections. So where I procrastinated on spirituality and a God of my understanding, if I were to do it again, that would be the first thing I did as I walk into AA was, how do I believe in God? I'm not leaving until I believe in God. If I were to do it again, somebody say the right words to me so I believe. Somebody say the right words to me so I can do the 3rd and 11th step. God is mentioned a lot in the program of AA. A lot of people are scared of that because we think we're so smart. My sponsor is a super smart chemist. He was an atheist. Almost every alcoholic you talk to in the rooms of AA will say, when I first came in here, you guys started talking about God, I turned right around and I left. It wasn't until I got beat up out there that I came back and perhaps began the leap of faith. So, Kevin, I'll ask you the same questions. Do you think you're God? Have you ever prayed on a leap of faith? Have you ever prayed for the willingness to believe? And what is your conception of God? We all have one deep down, even me, the agnostic, and even atheists. Just put them in a foxhole in Afghanistan, getting shelled and shot at, and tell me you don't hear the Lord's Prayer coming out of that atheist's mouth. Same thing happens when you're having sex. There's no atheists in love or war, because when you're having sex, it's, oh God, this, and oh God that. And when you're at war, it's oh God this and oh God that. Stop me if I'm wrong. There's no atheists at war, and there's probably none in the bedroom either. But whatever your conception of God is, leap of faith. You no longer make decisions. God's will be done. Kevin's God. Kevin's conception. It's my understanding at this point in my journey, and it probably will expand and grow. It's my understanding that God is so vast, everyone who believes in every type of God, whether it has 7 arms in India, or whether it's Buddha or Jesus Christ, they're all right because God is so vast. It's incomprehensible, is my understanding. And that's what I put my faith in. Something I can't even put into words, let alone make a drawing of. It's something that doesn't work on words. It's stuff that I've never experienced before. You know, black hole stuff, universal stuff, non-language, non-body, just like, you know, incredible. And I put my faith into that. Why? Because I was so desperate. G-O-D, the gift of desperation, God. And it's happened for me. And in my belief, if I were to pray for you, that wouldn't do it for you unless you heard me and prayed with me. But you can pray. What I did was I say, God, I'm willing to believe. You know everything about me. You know that I have my ideas about the corruption of religion and God, and I don't understand. Please make me understand. And that was that. I had done step 3. I had handed my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. And since then it is growing and growing, and my understanding is expanding. So leap of faith is what it is, Kevin. Not me. I'm done. My power is done. All I do is keep getting drunk. All I do is keep getting dumped. All I do is keep getting fired. All I do is keep getting evicted. My power is not doing it. God's will be done. God is anything but me, aka reality, life on life's terms. You know what I mean? And that, I've quit Prozac in these 7 months because I no longer need an antidepressant. I no longer need an anti-anxiety medication. My anti-anxiety, my antidepressant is God's will be done. There is no sense in me sweating it. If you're going to pray, why worry? If you're going to worry, why pray? These are now the philosophies I live my life on, and they just keep on growing. Our childhoods do mess us up when it comes to spirituality, though, Kevin. I'll give you that. Thank you, breakfast. By this day in October, I should be a certified peer support specialist. I'll watch that video, Shades. Chore Bunny, God is energy, and when we are in alignment with the universal energy, we do well. God, for me, in the beginning, a power greater than myself, was the group of drunks called AA. Group of drunks, G-O-D, God. So in the beginning, I was listening to them. What did them say? Them said, I needed a God of my understanding. So that was what I got to doing. And I was so desperate that I was ready to give up my thinking. It was just my thinking that was preventing me from giving it to God. I've now learned that each of our thinking, each of our opinions is trivial. It's a sum of our experience thus far in life, our desires, our fears, our senses. It's trivial, it's objective, and it's limited. Our thinking, our best opinions get us drunk. Our acknowledgement of life on life's terms, facts, keep us sober. Fact. My best thinking didn't do shit for me for 40 years. I mean, it's done some things, you know, but it's also done the worst. Fact. That doesn't mean think harder. You know, it doesn't mean try harder. It doesn't mean fight harder. It means surrender. It is pointless. It is futile. We have a disease where our own will is our enemy. Our own ego is our enemy. We surrender it. That's why the white chip, the first chip you pick up in the rooms of AA, is the white chip, the universal sign of surrender. You're surrendering your will. Your will has gotten you here. You surrender it. I'm done with my will. I'm done with my best thinking. I'm done with my best arguments. I'm done with all my opinions. They get me into fights with people. They get me into fights with life. They get me into fights with booze. I'm done fighting. And it says right in the big book, you will come to a point where you have ceased fighting everyone and everything. You accept life on life's terms. You know peace, and you can comprehend the word serenity. I don't know where I was when that was read to me these past 20 years. I was asleep. I was spiritually asleep. And I am extremely grateful that I am awake. So, you know, anybody that's struggling with spirituality, I suggest you ask yourself one question. Who am I to say there is no God? That's what I asked myself. There's a story in the book about someone who asked themselves that. Who am I? I'm the one person out of trillions of human beings that have ever existed to be right about how there is no God? Get the fuck out of here. I was just listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson speak on the science of what happens after we die. And he said all these big words and explanations, and it was very convincing on how we don't exist just like we didn't exist before we were born. That is science. And that was Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I said, what do you know? You're talking about the ultimate unknown, death. There is literally no alive person that knows about death. In that sentence is the answer to that sentence. No person alive knows about death. You know who does know? The dead people. When was the last time you talked to a dead person? So even Neil deGrasse Tyson can't tell me that he knows about death. It's literally impossible. So even Neil deGrasse Tyson, I'm like, what do you know? You know? What do you know? But the awakening came when I asked myself, what do I know? Who am I to say there is no God? My best ideas take me to the liquor store. My best ideas have me driving drunk. My best ideas have put me in a coma, grand mal, seizure, detox 7 times, 3 rehabs, and a slew of jail, broken relationships, broken careers, homelessness. Those are my best ideas. That's my best willpower. I don't care how convincing I can convince myself that if I just try harder, if I just think harder, it'll work. That's the disease talking. Let go. Surrender. Stop fighting everyone and everything and just love acceptance. Trust in God. And that's my spiritual awakening. And since then I've put it first. I've put my trust in God first. I've put my program of Alcoholics Anonymous first. I don't care if I don't have a job. You know what happens? You guys start pledging to the membership. Money starts coming out of nowhere. Sure, I'm skinning by right now. I'm eating boiled eggs and You know, sure, but it's growing. And that's because I'm doing the next right thing. I'm not, and faith without works is dead. So I have been looking for a job. I can't just say, God's will be done and just chill on my couch until I get a job, a girlfriend, and spiritual enlightenment. I got to do the work. Faith without works is dead. Zen Buddhism, for me, makes a lot of sense. There's your higher power. Richard Bachman, turn your will over to that. Say, I don't know what I'm doing. The evidence is there. I mean, I have achieved some things and I can do some things, but humbly I say I'm powerless over some stuff. Hand your will over to Zen Buddhism. Start following the what they teach. Don't make your own version of it and follow that. Follow that. That is your new employer. Well, I hope you guys got something from tonight's stream. Tomorrow's Friday, so I will be here at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Every weekday. Just a heads up about Wednesdays. My life is coming back in recovery, meaning I now have a job, so I don't stream Saturday nights or Sunday nights. I'm now getting a social life. So this Wednesday coming up, I'm going to try to get with a bunch of recovering alcoholics after a meeting, like 20 deep, to get some pizza. They've been doing it for 15 years after this meeting on Wednesdays. They've been getting pizza after the meeting. I'm going to do that. So if you don't see me Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, I'll be there Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm putting sobriety and recovery first. The fellowship of AA is part of the program. It answers a lot of questions about what am I going to do when I'm sober. Well, you're going to eat pizza with 20 spiritually enlightened motherfuckers. If you do the next right thing, these answers come out of nowhere. But I'm not going anywhere. I love this stream. I love what this community's become. And I absolutely love my 2 new members tonight. And I love that I get to help. If I have some value, I love that. I'm grateful for it. And I appreciate it. So I will be here. Tomorrow, 9 p.m. Tony G, thanks for the $5, homie. No doubt. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful, and it does help. And it does add up. It really does. So thank you, everyone. And if you would like to join to help me carry the message, the join button is in the chat, and the join button is on my channel page. But I'm gonna keep coming back whether you join or not. So I will see you tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Time with an addiction recovery topic that I am aiming to help you with, because that helps me. And I appreciate it, Tony G, and everyone else. Until tomorrow, keep it clean, keep it real, keep doing the damn thing as long as it's in line with God's will. Peace.